Every sleep expert says you need 7 to 9 hours or you'll destroy your health. So why did an entire civilization of monks live long, focused, productive lives on half that, while you can barely function? The answer isn't discipline. It's something far more disturbing about how you've been sleeping wrong. Medieval monks divided their entire day into 8 prayer sessions, called the Divine Office. Not 7, not 9, exactly 8. And this rigid schedule forced them awake at hours that would make most of us cry into our pillows. The first prayer, Matins, started around 2 in the morning, every single night. Didn't matter if it was summer or winter. Didn't matter if you were exhausted from a day of farming. 2 a.m., you're up and praying. Here's what's wild. These monks never slept through the night the way we do. That uninterrupted 8-hour stretch you're desperately chasing, they would have found that bizarre, like wearing shoes on your hands. So how did they wake up without iPhone alarms or those sunrise lamps your cousin swears by? Monastery bells. Massive bronze bells that rang every few hours, echoing through stone hallways whether you liked it or not. The original alarm system, except you couldn't hit snooze. Try ignoring a bell loud enough to wake the dead when your punishment is public humiliation in front of your brothers. But this schedule wasn't some random torture device designed by sleep-hating sadists. It was intentional. The whole point was ensuring someone was praying during every part of the day and night, especially the darkest hours when everyone else was sleeping. Someone had to hold down the spiritual fort at 3 a.m. Might as well be Brother Thomas. Archaeological digs at monastery ruins reveal something clever. Sleeping cells were positioned ridiculously close to the church. We're talking steps away. Monks could roll out of bed and reach prayers within minutes of waking. No commute, no delays, just immediate purpose. And after months of this routine, their bodies adapted. Monks started waking naturally before the bells even rang. Sleep researchers now call this entrained circadian rhythms. Basically, your body learns the schedule so well it becomes automatic. Makes sense, right? Do anything consistently enough and your biology catches up. But here's where things get interesting. This wasn't just about waking up at weird hours. The monks were actually splitting their sleep into 2 completely separate chunks. And that changes everything about what we think we know about rest. Here's the thing nobody told you about sleep. We've been doing it wrong for about 200 years. Medieval monks didn't just wake up at weird hours because some abbot told them to. They actually split their entire night into 2 separate chunks. First sleep, second sleep. And honestly, it worked better than whatever you did last night. The first sleep kicked off right after evening prayers around 8 p.m. Monks would crash hard for roughly 4 hours. Then that 2 a.m. bell would ring, they'd drag themselves to church, chant some psalms, and here's where it gets interesting. They'd go back to bed for round 2. Another couple hours of sleep until about 6 in the morning. 6 hours total, but spread out, with a prayer break in the middle. Sounds exhausting, right? Well, plot twist. This wasn't some crazy monk invention. Everyone slept like this. Historian Roger E. Kirch spent years digging through old documents and found over 500 references to first sleep and second sleep in diaries, court records, medical texts. People talked about it the way we talk about breakfast. Completely normal. Just how things worked. One court document from the 1600s mentions a man waking after his first sleep to check on his livestock. A doctor's guide recommended patients take medicine after first sleep. Nobody explained what it meant because everybody already knew. My grandmother used to wake up at 3 a.m., putter around the kitchen for an hour, then go back to bed. I thought she was just old and weird. Turns out she was historically accurate. The monks had accidentally stumbled onto something. Or maybe they preserved something the rest of us forgot. Either way, their schedule wasn't fighting human nature, it was working with it. And before you think this is just ancient history that doesn't apply to you sitting there with your phone at midnight, modern scientists decided to test whether humans still have this pattern buried somewhere inside us. What they found changes everything we thought we knew about how much sleep you actually need. Here's where things get really interesting. In the 1990s, a psychiatrist named Thomas Ware ran an experiment that would have made medieval monks smile. He took a group of modern people and stripped away their artificial lights. No lamps, no screens, just 14 hours of darkness every single night. What happened? Within weeks, these regular people spontaneously started sleeping in 2 chunks. 4 hours, wake up, stay alert for an hour or 2, then sleep again. Sound familiar? Nobody told them to do this. Their bodies just remembered. Like some ancient program buried deep in our biology, finally got a chance to run again. Monks figured this out 800 years ago without a single research grant. But wait, there's more happening during that middle of the night waking period than anyone expected. Blood tests from various subjects showed something remarkable. During the gap between first and second sleep, their prolactin levels shot up dramatically. Prolactin is the same hormone that floods your system after, well, let's just say after very enjoyable activities. It creates this feeling of calm alertness. Relaxed but sharp. Peaceful but present. Monks weren't just praying at 2 a.m. because some rule book told them to. They were praying during their brain's natural sweet spot. And here's the kicker that sleep researchers now understand. That wakeful period serves as what they call a maintenance window. Your brain uses this time to move memories from short-term storage into long-term files. It processes emotions, sorts through the day's mental clutter. Then artificial lighting showed up in the 1800s. Gas lamps, then electric bulbs. Suddenly humans could push back darkness whenever they wanted. Within a few generations, biphasic sleep vanished from Western culture. 8 hours straight became normal. We literally forgot how humans slept for thousands of years. My grandfather would have called that throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He'd be right, so monks were accidentally hacking their neurology. But what were they actually doing during those dark, quiet hours? So what exactly were monks doing at 2 in the morning? Not scrolling through their phones, I can tell you that much. Matins prayers lasted about 45 minutes to an hour. Monks would recite psalms, read scripture passages, and chant responses back and forth in the dark church. Sounds boring? Maybe. But here's the thing. They believed praying while everyone else slept proved real devotion. Anyone can pray at noon. Praying when it's freezing and pitch black outside, that takes commitment. And here's what surprised me when I researched this. These monks weren't stumbling around half asleep like I am when I get up for a bathroom break. The opposite, actually. They used this quiet window for their most intense mental work. Meditation, memorization, deep focus. Why? Because the monastery at 2 a.m. was dead silent. No conversations, no carts rolling by, no animals making noise. Just pure, uninterrupted stillness. Try finding that during daylight hours when everyone's chopping wood and baking bread. Some monks took advantage of this silence for copying manuscripts. We're talking incredibly detailed work where one mistake could ruin months of effort. They found the nighttime concentration so superior that they preferred it over daytime scribing. Makes sense, right? No distractions means fewer errors. But wait, wouldn't they be too tired to focus? Here's where it gets interesting. Cold stone floors and unheated churches in winter made drowsiness physically impossible. You can't doze off when you're borderline freezing. The discomfort kept them sharp whether they liked it or not. Nature's caffeine, basically. I tried working at 2 a.m. once, lasted about 20 minutes before I raided the refrigerator and fell asleep on the couch. These guys did it every single night for decades. The discipline alone is almost incomprehensible by modern standards. The pattern starts to make sense now. Wake up, pray in focused silence. Work when your mind is clearest. Return to sleep, but none of this would have worked if they were eating wrong. And their diet? It broke almost every rule we follow today. Now here's where it gets interesting, because sleep is only half the equation. You can have the perfect sleep schedule, but if you're stuffing your face with pizza at 11 p.m., your body's working overtime while you're trying to rest. Monks? They never made this mistake. Most monks ate only once or twice a day. And get this, they finished eating by early evening, sometimes as early as 5 or 6. By the time their heads hit those straw pillows, their stomachs were basically empty. Why does this matter? Digestion is exhausting work. Your body has to break down food, sort nutrients, manage blood sugar. That's a full-time job happening while you're supposed to be recovering. Modern studies show that eating within 3 hours of bedtime reduces sleep efficiency by up to 20%. That's like losing 12 minutes of quality rest for every hour you're in bed. Monks dodged this trap completely. By accident, sure, but still. Their main meal was simple stuff. Bread, vegetables, beans, maybe some fish on special occasions. Nothing fancy. This created steady energy throughout the day without the blood sugar roller coaster that modern diets cause. No sugar crash at 3 p.m. No desperate need for coffee by 10 a.m. And then there's fasting. Monks fasted regularly, sometimes for entire days. Sounds brutal, right? But here's the weird part. Research now shows fasting triggers something called autophagy. That's when your cells basically clean house, recycling damaged parts and repairing themselves. This process kicks into high gear during sleep, so monks weren't just sleeping. They were supercharging their body's repair systems. They did drink beer and wine before you think they were total health nuts. Monasteries were famous for brewing, but portions were strictly controlled. Just enough to hydrate, not enough to mess with the 2 a.m. wake-up call. Try pulling that off after 3 glasses of modern IPA. Their whole relationship with food was different. Eating served a purpose: fuel for work and prayer. Nothing more. But eating right only works if your body actually needs the fuel. And that brings us to something monks had plenty of. The Rule of St. Benedict, written back in 516 AD, had one non-negotiable principle: ora et labora, prayer and work. Monks didn't just sit around contemplating existence. They farmed fields. They baked bread. They brewed beer. They built furniture. They tended animals. By the time evening rolled around, these guys were genuinely exhausted. And here's the thing about being physically tired. It's completely different from being mentally tired. Modern exhaustion comes from staring at spreadsheets and sitting in traffic. Your brain feels fried, but your body hasn't done anything. So you lie in bed with a racing mind, wondering why sleep won't come. Monks had the opposite problem. Their bodies demanded rest. And when your muscles are genuinely fatigued, sleep doesn't negotiate. It arrives. Scientists call this sleep pressure. The more physical activity you accumulate, the faster you fall asleep and the deeper you go. Monks were building sleep pressure all day without realizing it. But wait, it gets more interesting. Research shows that physically active people extract more recovery from each hour of sleep. Their bodies spend more time in slow-wave sleep, which is the restorative phase where tissue repairs and memories consolidate. So a monk sleeping 4 hours might get the same restoration as a sedentary office worker sleeping 7. Not fair, right? The average American today walks somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 steps daily. Most of that is shuffling to the coffee machine and back. Medieval monks, estimates suggest they exceeded 15,000 steps through their routine duties alone. That's before counting any heavy lifting or agricultural work. I tried tracking my steps once during a normal workday, 2,800. I was basically a statue that occasionally visited the refrigerator. Monks didn't exercise for fitness. They didn't have fancy workout routines or gym memberships. They worked for survival. But the effect on their sleep architecture was identical to what we see in trained athletes today. Physical exhaustion was their sleep hack, and it explains why 4 hours felt like plenty. But exhaustion alone doesn't explain everything. There's another factor working in their favor. Here's the thing about monks that nobody talks about. They lived in the dark. Like, actually dark. Monasteries had no electricity, obviously. But really think about what that means. No overhead lights, no phone screens, no TV glow from the living room. The only light after sunset came from candles and oil lamps. And those things were pathetic by modern standards. A candle puts out about 12 lumens. Your average household bulb, 800 lumens. That means monks spent their evenings in conditions roughly 70 times darker than your living room right now. 70 times. And here's why that matters. Your brain has this gland called the pineal gland. Its job is producing melatonin, the hormone that makes you sleepy. But here's the catch. It only works properly in darkness. The moment bright light hits your eyes, melatonin production slams to a halt. Monks had zero problems here. Sunset came, candles got lit, and their brains immediately started pumping out melatonin. By 8 p.m., they were genuinely tired. No effort required, no sleep supplements, no meditation apps, just biology doing what biology does. Now compare that to us. The average American stares at blue light from screens until minutes before trying to sleep. Blue light is the worst offender because it mimics daylight. Your brain thinks the sun is still up. So melatonin gets delayed by about 2 hours. You're lying in bed wondering why you can't sleep while your phone charges 6 inches from your face. Monastery sleeping cells made this even better. The windows were tiny. often covered. Even during summer months when the sun set late, those stone rooms achieved near total darkness. I tried sleeping in complete darkness for a week once, taped up every LED, covered every light source. The difference was honestly embarrassing. Fell asleep faster than I had in years. But darkness was only half the equation monks accidentally mastered, because there was another environmental factor working in their favor, one that seems miserable on the surface, but actually turbocharged their sleep quality: temperature. Here's the thing nobody tells you about sleeping in a cold room. It's not punishment, it's a biological cheat code. Medieval monasteries were freezing. We're talking near zero temperatures in those stone sleeping cells during winter. No heating, no insulation, just you, a wool blanket, and prayers that your toes would survive until morning. Sounds miserable, right? But here's what those shivering monks stumbled onto. Your body actually needs to cool down to fall into deep sleep. About 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit drop in core temperature. That's the trigger. Without it, you're just lying there with your eyes closed, never hitting the restorative stages that actually matter. Modern bedrooms, they're sabotaging you. Most Americans keep their thermostat at 72 degrees. Cozy, sure, but sleep researchers say 65 is optimal, and even that's warmer than what monks dealt with. Now, monks weren't idiots. They wore simple wool habits to bed and piled on blankets. The genius was in the approach. They heated their bodies, not the room, created these little cocoons of warmth while breathing cold air. Perfect sleep microenvironment, and the benefits went beyond just falling asleep faster. Cold exposure before bed activates something called brown fat. This stuff burns calories to generate heat, boosting your metabolism. Monks woke up with energy reserves that a warm, stuffy bedroom simply cannot produce. There's another angle here too. When your body senses cold, it goes into a kind of survival mode. Sleep becomes more efficient, more compressed. Your brain squeezes maximum restoration out of minimum time because it thinks winter might kill you otherwise. Pretty clever trick from a bunch of guys who thought tomatoes were poisonous. I tried sleeping in a cold room for a week last winter. Hated night 1. By night 4, I was waking up before my alarm feeling like I'd slept 10 hours. The science is real, but temperature was only half their advantage. The monks had another weapon. Their minds worked differently during those dark nighttime hours, and what they discovered about the brain between first and second sleep, that changes everything. Here's something nobody tells you about the hours between midnight and dawn. Monks weren't just praying during that middle of the night window, they were tapping into a mental state that modern people almost never experience. And honestly, it might be the most valuable part of their entire sleep system. When you wake naturally after 4 hours of sleep, something weird happens in your brain. Your cortisol levels stay low. Stress hormones aren't flooding your system yet. But here's the twist. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for complex thinking, lights up with unusual activity. It's like having a sports car engine with no traffic on the road. Medieval scholars actually wrote about this. They called it their clearest thinking time. Not morning, not afternoon. The dead of night, right after prayers ended. Thomas Aquinas, one of history's most influential philosophers, reportedly did his deepest theological writing after matins. 2 a.m., freezing cold church, scratchy wool robes. That's when he produced work that people still study 800 years later. Makes you wonder what you'd accomplish if you weren't scrolling through your phone at midnight, right? But why does this work? Brain researchers found that this window produces waves remarkably similar to experienced meditators. We're talking about monks who've been practicing for decades. Except these medieval guys stumbled into it through their sleep schedule, not years of meditation training. The prefrontal cortex running hot while stress hormones stay cool creates something rare: deep concentration without anxiety. Modern creativity studies actually back this up. Interrupted sleep, specifically waking mid-cycle, increases innovative thinking. I tried working at 2 a.m. once, made coffee, sat at my desk, felt incredibly productive for about 40 minutes, then crashed so hard I was useless for 2 days. The monks had something I didn't. They had a system. Every night, same time, same prayers, same return to bed afterward. Their bodies expected this interruption, which brings us to something even more powerful than their mental clarity tricks. The one thing monks had that modern people desperately lack: consistency so rigid it would drive most of us insane. Here's the thing nobody tells you about sleep. It's not really about hours, it's about consistency. Monks followed the exact same schedule every single day. Christmas, same schedule. Easter, same schedule. Random Tuesday in February when it's freezing and you'd rather stay in bed, same schedule. 365 days a year. No weekends, no sleeping in, just 5 more minutes. And their bodies loved them for it. See, your circadian rhythm is basically a toddler. It throws tantrums when you change things up. Stay up late on Friday, sleep until noon on Saturday, and suddenly your internal clock has no idea what's happening. Is it morning? Is it night? Should we release cortisol or melatonin? Research shows that irregular sleep schedules increase heart disease risk by 27%. 27. That's not a small number. That's a maybe I should stop treating weekends like sleep buffets number. But here's where monks had an unfair advantage. Monastery rules actually punished anyone who slept through prayers. Imagine your boss docking your pay every time you hit snooze. You become a morning person real fast. After a few months of this rigid routine, something fascinating happened. Monks' bodies started anticipating every transition before the bells even rang. Their hormones adjusted automatically, cortisol rising right before wake time, melatonin flowing right before bed, no alarms needed. Their biology became a Swiss watch. Meanwhile, modern Americans do this weird thing where they torture themselves all week, then try to catch up on weekends. I've done it. You've done it. Everyone's done it. But sleep debt doesn't work like a bank account. You can't deposit 8 extra hours on Sunday and withdraw them on Wednesday. Your body doesn't care about your weekend plans. The monasteries essentially invented forced sleep hygiene centuries before that term even existed. No decisions to make, no willpower required, no lying in bed at 11 p.m. scrolling through your phone thinking, just one more video. The schedule was the schedule. Period. And that boring predictability, that's exactly what made it work.